All right, what's up, beautiful agency owners? I'm excited. I have another amazing podcast guest. Actually, he's been back several times. I don't know why we keep inviting him back. No, I'm just kidding. He's a good friend of mine, and will provide lots of value. We're going to talk about leading with people first for your agency. Now, before we jump into the show, I want you to do something. I want you to take a screenshot off your phone of listening to the podcast, upload it to Instagram, tag us, and give us a shout out on Instagram. And then I can shout you back and say, hey, thanks for listening to the show. So let's go ahead and get in the episode. Hey, Steve, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jason, good to be back.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I keep inviting you back. I guess you do well each time. So, no, welcome back. For the people that have not checked out the other episodes, and we'll link those into the show notes of the episode. So make sure you guys go to jasonswank.com and check those out. Tell us who you are and what do you do?
I'm Steve Pockross. I am the CEO of Verblio. We are a Denver-based marketplace content creation platform. So we have a network of highly curated, fantastic writers that we put together with our unique business model and put it on our platform so that we can do high quality content at scale for any niche. And we work primarily for agencies.
Awesome. Well, welcome back. And let's kind of jump into it, right? So let's talk about what does it mean to lead with people first in growing company. I mean, you guys are, I think, 30 plus employees on your team, so, and I think a lot of agencies will relate to this.
We are. So we've been fortunate to have some really high power growth in the last. So I took over as CEO 4.5 years ago. And we were talking about what are some of the lessons that we could really pass on to agencies to help them with their growth as well, that can relate between the type of business that we do and the type of work that agencies do. And so one of those big strategies is putting people first. And that might sound like the most cliche strategy of all time. Going back to good to great, put the right people on the bus first. I think we took a really, we think about it and brought it to every aspect of our business. And so I think bringing it to life is really interesting. Hopefully some of these nuggets that helped us can really help others. It has helped us grow 400% over 4.5 years as a bootstrap startup, with no investment, no investment in order to fund that growth, all being organic growth. And it's also helped us grow. When I first started, we were 11 people for the first 3 years. And over the last 2 years, we've gone from 11 to 30. So how do you accelerate that growth with the right people strategy? And then also, how do you ensure that it continues to build even as you're expanding rapidly?
Yeah, a lot of times I see kind of people, they get to certain stages of climbing the mountain and they kind of backtrack, right? And like I look at I look at growing any business or really growing an agency into kind of like six phases, right? Like you got staging, base camp, the climb, the crux, the crest, and then obviously the summit. And at each one of them, you're focused on different things. Like in the very beginning, you're focused on how do I build this company, and then like what do I need to focus on? How do I get further ahead? All that kind of stuff. So when you came in and you guys were 11 people, what was the main thing that you were focused on, and what was the big challenge that you were trying to overcome?
Wow, it's hard to boil it down to just one, considering anybody who's ever taken over a company or a division knows that you're kind of moving into somebody else's house. It's kind of like this. I'm very grateful to have this house. It's really beautiful. I'm excited to live here. And then you question every single choice made about that house. Why are there carpets on the floor? Why are there sconces all over the place? And so I think a lot of those decisions are really frequent to that. So number one is to keep in mind that a lot of people put in a big deal in order for you to get there. And the second is to question everything. So the first thing that was most important to me was instilling my values in the company and then making them not like imposing them, but creating an our values. So I knew that whatever I started with, there are things that are just deal breakers for me, like follow up on what you say. If you commit to it, you're going to do it, or you're going to create a natural distrust throughout your organization. And so the very first thing I said at the meeting when people asked me kind of what would new leadership be like was to start creating those values. And the most important thing was less to say what they were, but really to exhibit them, that I follow up on everything that I'm standing for, that I bring enthusiasm and excitement to my meetings and my projects, that I plan them out. And my very first hire was Paul Zalewski, who you know very well, who has worked with
Will
me at
Ferrell.
6 consecutive companies. Um, was partially because I knew he's an amazing marketer, but we really invested very little in marketing at the beginning because we wanted to focus so much on the product. And the most important piece was that Paul exhibited all the values to every other new member of the team. This is what good looks like. The CEO can't be there all the time, and having members of your team that just emulate those values for you and can start bringing them to life is critical. So that was my first big
Well, I think you
investment.
just brought him on because he looked like Will Ferrell. But
It's
you know what?
possible.
Yeah. Well, you said a couple really cool things, and a lot of us, I think you said, well, question everything. And this was for you coming in from an outsider with no emotion coming into it. Now, most people that are listening to the show, they've created it from the ground up. And
Right.
a lot of times, kind of what I want you guys to unpack is you should question everything that you've made the decision to get here and question everybody on your team as well on an ongoing basis. I mean, I almost think it's kind of quarterly. Like I live and die by 90 days rather than the year. Sure, we have yearly goals, but I rather be able to adjust quicker. And I try to question everything as well. I think that's really good. And another thing I think that I love that you mentioned was, marketing, right? That's one of the first things I tell people is like, you got to bring in marketing, in the early stages in order to, really build that pipeline. And then, marketing should break sales and sales should break operations and blah, 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 and so on and so on. So I love it. What are some, surprising things, that happened to you about, building this culture?
I think one of the most surprising things was that the values that I set out to create took their own form. They really bonded with the people that we brought on board. So they were. So I always talk about my management style as being, I want to run my company like I run my ultimate frisbee teams. I want it to be incredibly well. It's funny because ultimate frisbee teams are the maximum size of 30 people, and I just hit 30, so I don't know what I'm going to say now. But it's being super collaborative. It's rooting on for people. It's focusing when you're in your huddles and you're down 12-2, you get into the huddle and you talk about how much fun we're going to have and how much enjoyable this is going to be. And you cheer for each other as opposed to going around and talking about all of the different processes you're going to create to win the game that just brings everybody down. And so I really wanted to call it the spirit of the game, value. And the rest of my team, there are almost no athletes, and they all refer to these sports as sports ball. And so they captured it, and they basically said that even we play like an ultimate frisbee team, even though 73% of our company doesn't know what a sport is. And then kind of wrote it up in our own really distinct way. It's really interesting how culture is not you, culture is how all of you make it together. And then before we leave the 90-day feedback thing, I think you said something really important. One of my favorite, most important concepts to me of 90 days is every new person, especially if you're an agency owner, you started this place, you're going to have a very distorted view of your reality because this is yours, this is your baby. And so 90 days is such a great time. Every new hire that comes onto your company, to ask them a really explicit, what happened at the company that wasn't what you expected to happen? How was this set up for you ahead of time? How are we not living up to the things we talk about? Because I can't see these things. So the question that I asked my teammates in every one-on-one, and I have a one-on-one with everyone in the company at least quarterly, is what are the things you think I should know, or that you're seeing that you think I would want to know?
I love that. Well, yeah, I talked with someone recently and we talked about, yeah, everyone says they have an open door policy, but most of your
Hmm.
team members are not going to step through that door. You actually have to go out
Right.
after them and go, hey, and ask those direct questions like you just did, but like, what are you seeing that I'm not? Because they're going to see things differently than management and leadership. Um, Talk a little bit about, especially coming in from the outside and having a team of 30. are you more the mentality now from when you came in to like when you came in, were you focused on kind of like the what and the how, or were you focused on the who? Like, who do I bring in? I know you mentioned bringing in, Will Ferrell, um, but he
was,
looks. We need literally. I wish I had a little overlay right now. I could pop side by side, like you. Everyone would like, yeah, he's Will Ferrell.
I really don't think he looks that much like Will Ferrell, but
I know you're the only one that does it, but he's Will
we
Ferrell.
do a vote on your podcast to have people write in.
We should. We should. We literally. What we'll do is we'll put a picture of him and Will on the very bottom, and then, or maybe we'll put it on Facebook when we post it up. I think that's what we'll do. You guys gotta
I
get
think
that.
that's the right approach. So back to your actual question.
Yes.
Um, is so you've got the what the how. A lot of people refer to that. Another business framework for the exact same question is: do you focus first on the people, the product, or the processes? Because these are the three ways you can address all problems. To me, you have to focus on the people first because they decide the processes, they decide the product. They're the ones who are going to be taking your vision 10 levels down and making every decision to bring it to life. And so hiring became our absolute priority of making sure we were bringing on the right people and not making mistakes. And then our second became making sure we kept these people. So our churn levels are just ridiculously low. We waste very few cycles. They say that every person churned might be worth double the amount of their salary in lost time. Um, and the third benefit of having a great culture is you get incredible amounts of productivity and excitement out of it. So we definitely focused on the who first.
Very cool. Which leads me to kind of the next question is, how do you find really good people? And how do you know when you find really good people? I think that's what a lot of people, in the agency world struggle.
Mm-hmm. So our hiring strategy and a couple of the things that I think have been keys to our success, and a lot of these were learning and iterative as we went along. One of the things that's really important to me that I think everybody can do, and it's all in your power, is to write the most unique killer job description that just attracts the type of people you're looking for. Our job descriptions are fun. I want to read them. I want to laugh at least 3 times is what I tell my people as they're writing them. But I also really want to feel what the job is. So we write killer job descriptions and they'll stand out. How many people actually put that in? That's a big part of your marketing. You are marketing to talent. Most people only market to the roles and responsibilities and the experience set. Huge way to stand out. The second is to create the criteria of what you're looking for. And if you can be very specific on it and also make it different from what others are looking for. So the hardest way to get talent is to hire been there, done that. Those are the most expensive. They're most competitive. You're going to be fighting in a red ocean for the exact same people all the other agencies are looking for. Are there qualities that you like in people? For us, it's curiosity, creativity, and passion about something that is not their work. So my number one question in an interview is, if you're ever interviewing with me, is what's a class that you took in undergrad that you didn't think you'd be excited about that you became unbelievably passionate about, and why? And somebody who can be passionate about something that's not the job function, to me, shows distinct curiosity. And I think that's particularly important to marketers out there. So there was a study like most of the skills in marketing in the last 3 years are different than they were the 5 years before, which means you need people who are going to constantly be looking for how to improve their skill set. And to me, curiosity is that way to get there. How do you find somebody who just wants to do it and be passionate? So find your unique skill set that other people aren't looking for. Make yourself unique, market to them, and then have those as your criteria when you're interviewing them.
Yeah, I would have failed that question. I've been like, Steve, I hated every class I ever had. I,
That's not true. I refuse to believe that.
no, it's pretty true. But then again, I tell people I still want to get this shirt going. I'm retired because I'm unemployable. I'm retired for working for someone else. So that would be a good T-shirt. Now that Verblio's 30 plus people, what are some things that you're doing to maintain the environment, maintain the culture? Because it starts to get out of control.
It gets completely out of control. So it's interesting there. So startups like agencies, I mean, we're all kind of the same ilk, which is that we start at a certain size and we go through these growth phases, which you coach a lot of your agencies on. And so there's the right amount of process for each phase. And someone told me that when you're startup, it's like wearing the wrong size clothing all over your body all the time. You either have too much process or too little at all times. And so we're working on our people and culture processes really diligently. We brought in a couple much more process driven people who are much better at this than I am to focus on how do we bring it to life. And we're focused on a few areas. One is we just had to have a platform. It's all consolidated in one area. We found an ingenious one called Leapsome. If anybody's looking for one that brings together so many of these disparate HR platforms, is everybody only seems to be able to do one thing on an HR platform, which I don't know why. One of the most critical factors was, being really clear about reviews, what we're looking for, creating a much better goal-setting platform so everything rolls up in our OKR style to the very top 5 goals of the company, so everyone knows what their role is. They update them on a quarterly basis. It's really process-driven, and it's way outside my sweet spot. It's not what I like to do. And the last is it has cultural surveys where every month we send out 10 questions that takes less than 10 minutes to get the feedback from our team. When we started this, there was no one more than 2 levels below me, and now there are people 5 levels below me. How am I going to get that information? How are we going to make rational decisions about what we think is our culture, what we think we're conveying versus what people are actually feeling at different levels of the company? And the last for me is that one-on-one meetings, which is I meet with everyone at least quarterly, but we do probably more one-on-ones at Verblio than anywhere I've ever been. It's a huge investment in time. It means that you're putting people first. This is really key to how we bring this to life. We could be spending that time doing more sales calls. We could be spending that time doing more platform, but we're making sure that we're empathizing with our team, we're understanding where they're at, and we're really communicating. So we're all working more coherently together, and I think that's an investment that pays off.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you start having a bigger team, or as you start to grow that team, you're all thinking about like, how do I build the right team? And then once you build that right team, you're kind of like, how do I become that leader to them? And then, the next is like, how can I actually grow the leaders, especially when you have that many different layers of going, well, I need to make the decision making spread out so it's not all flowing, to us, and then I'm the toll booth, or even
Mhm.
my leaders. It's like, how do I create many layers of making decision making power, and freedom? And I was chatting with one agency, and he talked about he was the biggest bottleneck on the operations for a while, and he said for many years it was a big struggle on himself, on his family, even on the agency. And then finally he just got to a point where he's like, I'm going to document 50% of what I know,
Mm.
and then use that, the team could use that as a foundation to build upon, and then innovate from that. And it changed everything for them. And now they're well in the 8-figure mark, and just flying to wherever they actually want to go. So love it. What are some 3 tips for the listeners who want to make a decision to focus on culture, um, and really kind of, to catapult them to the next level?
I'll see if I'm going to start talking and see if it ends up being 3.
Okay.
Um, the, so the first tip is, what are you sacrificing? When you say you want to put culture first, you're going to have to deprioritize something. We invested in an executive coach. When I'm investing in people and I'm basically trying to find junior talent that has never done it before, what's the one area they're going to lack is that level of executive coaching. So I sacrificed a salesperson. We didn't bring on a professional salesperson until last year after growing 300% before we did so. And we focused on an executive coach first because I thought that was more important. That's a big call. That's a hard thing to tell. If you're the owner, then it's a hard thing to tell yourself. And if you have a board like I do, it's a hard thing to argue to them. So how much time is it going to take, and work backwards? It's really easy to say this is my number one priority. It's not easy to say this is my number one priority and I'm not going to do these 3 things because of it.
Yeah, I love it.
So that's my number 1. My number 2 is to get constant feedback. It's really similar to your 90 days. Like, check in, do surveys. How do you keep yourself honest so you don't believe it? Come up with the right set of questions of celebration. And then number 3 is every opportunity you can. One of my favorite podcast guests recently was telling me about the hardest thing to be a CEO is to not just say one thing once, you have to say it 100 times and keep repeating yourself until you're bored, is to keep repeating your values. This is an example of why this reflects my values. Reward the people publicly. If somebody comes to you with criticism about your culture where you're not living up to your own values, and you worked really hard to ask people to give you feedback, call out that person at the all hands, give them a reward and say, thank you, you are right. And you're going to look for, you're going to get a better culture, a more curious and critical thinking culture, and you're going to get less yes people in your company.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. You got to kind of stand by your values. Just literally a little while ago, I was chatting with one of our team members, and we unfortunately had to ask one of the mastermind members to leave. And they're a new member over 2 months. There's just too many red flags, just didn't mesh. And we just didn't want it to pollute the rest of the culture. And so, yeah, it hurts to say no to reoccurring revenue, but at the end of the day, you got to know you're gonna stand on your values and not sacrifice that and be kind of a whore for sacrificing it, which a lot of people do.
It's so that there could be very few things that are more powerful to a company than fire a client that's being abusive to your people. When I think one of the things I've gotten the most positive feedback on is when there was a client that was kvetching about my some of my people while they were in the room, and I just told them that was absolutely unacceptable on the call. And I think it really, like, everyone on the team felt supported, like they could do whatever they wanted, and I'd have their back. But it's hard to feel that in the moment, especially when somebody's paying your bills and you really need them.
Oh yeah, I mean but you get to that kind of the next stage where you're like, I'm not going to sacrifice us. We'll figure it out. Um, and it's just going to be that much better because yeah, your people are everything. And if you don't have their backs, well, then they're not going to have yours. Like literally, they'll hang on until
Mhm.
they find the BBD, right? The bigger and better deal.
Yeah, completely. And then the so we've talked about kind of hiring as a people strategy, investing in people and bringing culture to life. And I think the last piece is thinking of all of the people related to your company as your stakeholders, as your clients. For me, it's my writers. We need to treat them special. And like, I want them to have the best writing gigs in the industry so that they feel like this is the place they want to bring, because the more excited they are about their job, the better the writing and the product will be for our clients, and all around. And so it's a virtuous cycle. You bring on the good people who are empathetic and excited and creative and passionate, and they start feeling all the other stakeholders in your business the same way.
Yeah, love it. I love it, Steve. Where can people check out more about Verblio, and especially if they need some help around content writing, which I highly recommend you guys. You guys are rock and are awesome, and use you guys for so many years.
Cool. Thank you so much. So you can find us at verblio.com, verblio.com. And you can find my podcast, the Yes and Marketing Podcast. We've had about 54 episodes, which is broader marketing leadership and people who bring creativity into marketing. And then we have a special offer for the Jason Swenk listeners out there of get 50% off your first month at verblio.com/smart agency. Tell them you heard about this on the Jason Swenk Show, and we'll give you 2 months of free onboarding as well to help you out, and which we hope is an easy process, but we know that's a big lift for some of you.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Steve. And thanks for coming on the show. And if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you comment below. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out a new episode. And make sure you actually take Verbally up on that offer. I mean, that's killer. They're giving you 50% off first couple of months. So that's it's amazing. Thanks so much for doing that. And if you guys want to leave a comment or a review, that will help us out to reach more people, especially if you listen the whole way through. And until next time, have a swank day.